Hi, everybody. It's Gene Simmons, and you're not, and you're listening to the Potter Than Hell podcast with Steve, BC, BB, and Dylan. But you knew that, didn't you?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Potter Than Hell podcast. This is your last stop on the crazy train of hard rock and heavy metal. So sit back, buckle in, and hang on. Here we go.
Hello, Potter Than Hellions. Welcome back to the Potter Than Hell podcast. This is Steve, your host. I'm joined as always by
BC.
And I am keyboard player again today. However, we have two very special guests today. We are at the Warehouse in Cortland, New York. We have special returning guest Carl Canedy.
Hello.
And David Rock Feinstein.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
Guys, thanks for meeting with us. Just a great privilege to be allowed to come up here to your lair up here and see all your cool shit here. We got the drum set up on the side here, mics and amps everywhere, and we pulled up and I'm like, this is the place, because we could hear music just blaring when we pulled up here. So we definitely knew we were in the right place. And guys, welcome. Like I said, thank you for spending some time with us. It's
thanks for having us. I mean, it's always a pleasure.
For all those of you out there, our listeners out there, you know they have a brand new album out, The Brotherhood of Metal, and is absolutely fucking kick-ass. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but I just want to make sure if you don't have it, get it. It is definitely worth the listen. So far, what do you think of the album, BC?
I love it. I just love the way everything is perfect, I think. You know, like nothing overshadows anything else. It's just produces. You hear everything perfectly, even with I like the organ keyboard, it just fills it in perfectly. It doesn't jump on anything or cover anything up.
It's nice to hear. David really wanted keyboards, and he uses it on his solo albums, and brought it into the rods, and it's really been great. Everybody's responded very favorably.
I like it.
I think it fills out the sound perfect on the album. I think it just accents it so much. And we listened to it on the way up, and we were like, I won't say picking it apart, but we were like, wow, that part, like there was like. We said there was nothing we would change on that. It was just just absolutely incredible. But we'll get into some songs and stuff after. But we've had Carl on the show several times already, and we got the Carl story. So let's get the David story. David, as far back as you want to go, and
how much time
we'll leave that up to you. So let it rip.
Well, I go back to when I was a teenager. I mean, just interested in music. My best friend at the time, we both listened to a lot of the bands that were out at the time, like the early English bands that were coming out. So we both wanted to play in bands, and we both did play in bands. And actually, I started out as a drummer in a band, and actually my first instrument was trumpet in a band. And of course, my cousin Ronnie played trumpet also. But started out as a drummer, and then got asked to be in his band probably around when his band was called Ronnie Dio and the Prophets, before Elf, and asked me. He came up one day one night when they were playing downtown. He said, "You can play guitar, can't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I can play guitar," which I knew like 3 chords, because my friend that I was in the band with, that I was a drummer in, we were friends, so he'd show me chords. I said, "Yeah, I can play guitar." So he goes, "Well, we're going to be needing a rhythm guitar player, because our rhythm guitar player is leaving the band, so we'd like to have you come in." And probably because I was, 5'2" or 3, like it made the line.
You didn't overshadow anybody.
So didn't have anything to do with my talent on guitar. But they worked me in. It took weeks and weeks. The original player, the rhythm guitar player, stayed on. He taught me, and I would go to the gigs with him. And back then it was 4 sets a night, in bars, and all cover material. And I learned I would sit in with, for a few songs, and I'd sit in for one, set, and then I'd sit in. So so I could play 4 sets, that's when he left and I took over. And, and then of course that band evolved from Ronnie Dio and the Prophets to the Electric Elves to the Elves and then to Elf. And, my inspirations back then were, not only bands like Led Zeppelin and The Who, but guitar players like, Richie Blackmore and Jeff Beck. And the guys that were back then, they were kind of a blues-based style of playing. It was before all the the intricate, styles like Randy Rhoads brought.
Right,
in,
before any kind of shredding
introduced,
took over.
To the thing. So those were my influences, and the rest is kind of history. Elf albums, then Elf's breakup, and Ronnie going on to Rainbow and Black Sabbath, and then his own band Dio, and that whole thing, and then of course the Rods formed in the late 70s or something like that.
79,
Carl
middle
and I
of
formed
79.
that. And then it'll be like 40 years that the Rods have been together next year. So
That's crazy.
time flies
It
by.
is
But
crazy.
that's a short rendition of my history, basically, in the music.
Now, when you were in the band with Ronnie, how long of a transition was it for you to go from rhythm to lead? Was it just kind of a natural progression for you?
No, actually,
you were kind of thrown into it.
There was a lead player in the band at the time. We were doing all cover songs, and we were doing stuff by Tom Jones and Engelbert Humperdinck, and because Ronnie's voice was capable of doing that kind of things, and they went over really well in clubs.
And he did it incredibly well.
Yeah, so we played. We had a week-long job in Connecticut, and we decided to drive home after the last night instead of staying overnight. We got in a car accident. We got in an accident. We were all riding in a van with all the equipment and everything, and a drunk driver ran into us, came over in our lane. So the lead guitar player in the band he was driving the van got killed.
Really?
And all of us got hurt pretty badly, The drummer was lucky, he just got a few scrapes and stuff like that, but, I had a broken ankle and got my face cut up. And Ronnie, actually, his whole scalp was torn back. He had over 100 stitches in his head. Doug Thaler was in the band at the time. He's permanently disabled in his leg. But anyways, long story short, when we reformed the band after that, Ronnie and I became the only guitar player. Nicky Panis was the lead guitar player that got killed in the accident.
Oh.
So when the band was reformed, I was the only guitar player. So I pretty much had to learn the leads that were on the songs that we were learning, and by doing that, I kind of established a style of my own. But my influences were, again, like I said, Blackmore and Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page and those kind of players. So that's basically. The transition came because it had to. I needed to have a lead guitar. I was the only guitar. I had to play leads, So that's how I started to play lead guitar.
I want to say during that period of Elf, after Nicky died, and I didn't know Nicky, but I know his brother, but I used to go see the Elves, and they would do, like Tommy from The Who, they would do like crazy material, and every band, all those great bands from the late 60s and early 70s, they did those bands, the late 60s, they were dead on, all the different styles, with Ronnie's voice being so versatile and the musicality of the musicians in the band. When they did a song, it was dead on like the original, and sometimes, like even Procol Harum, like stuff that you wouldn't expect a band to emulate, they emulated. I mean, they were fantastic at learning their craft as when they were doing covers, just unbelievably good.
When a new album came out, we would learn pretty much the whole album. Like when Sgt. Pepper came out, we would learn, except for the stuff that was produced that couldn't do live,
Right.
But we basically tried to learn the whole album, or we did a medley of, this is a Sgt. Pepper medley, which contained most of the songs on the
parts
album.
that were
Same
playable.
thing when the Who came out with Tommy, we did the same thing with that. So
Working with tapes, you guys played horns.
yeah, Ronnie and I both played. We used to do some pre-recorded some trumpet parts in the background. It was like that played. It's kind of like was done later on in years, but this was like the primitive version of it. Where we played with a click track and we had horn parts in the background that we recorded.
You guys are way ahead of your time then.
Yeah,
That's
so,
crazy.
But yeah, I mean, Ronnie being capable of singing pretty much anything enabled us to do pretty much anything musically, as long as we could play it.
And the drummer Gary Driscoll, who's deceased as well, Gary would learn those parts, drum parts. Like me being a drummer, I learned those parts as well. and he nailed those parts. Like every song, he had it. If Keith Moon played a crazy fill that nobody in the world could dissect, he would play it. He would nail it, and it was, you know, that's what part of what made them so great was the versatility and the fact that the dedication to picking it apart. But like in terms of the just the drum section, he had everything down.
Now, when you guys, are there any recordings of any of those shows? Do you have? Are there any? Is there like a? Is there like a vault?
There are some. I mean, they're kicking
War
around
Pigs.
here, and they're like just cassette
Right.
recordings. You know, there's some video that was taken like 16 millimeter because there was no video back then. But there is some stuff around. I mean, I can't put my hands on some of it. I mean,
Right.
I have somebody made me a VCR tape of a compilation of some different footage of us walking after the show and, you know, to the hotel and stuff like that.
That's
So,
cool because I know Wendy's been putting out some of the older Dio stuff, and it would be cool to see older stuff like that included in that also. That'd be amazing to see.
Yeah. I don't know how far back she's going to go with that stuff, but it would be good to see some of that.
YouTube has War Pigs, and if you listen to their version of War Pigs, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, the live version. Of
Really?
it.
Yeah.
I'll have to look for that.
Ronnie at that time never knew he'd be in Sabbath. You know, singing War Pigs.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. And so when you were in Elf, how did that come to were you still in the band also when Ronnie went to Rainbow, or had you already?
No,
departed at
I
that
left
point?
the band for personal reasons, you know. I just felt that I needed to do some different things. The band went on to replace me and did 2 albums after that. And they moved to California. And because of our association with Deep Purple right from the very beginning, because 2 of the guys from Deep Purple, Roger Glover and Ian Pace, produced the first Elf album. And, you know, we supported them on a lot of their tours during that time. Because of the association, Richie knew, you know, they all knew us.
Right.
And, you know, Richie was splitting from Deep Purple, formed his own band, and of course, Ronnie was a good selection, you know, for a singer. So he pulled Ronnie as his singer, and that's how Ronnie happened to go with Rainbow and Richie.
Now, between Elf and when you formed the Rods with Carl, anything going on with you in between that, or just a couple bands here and there?
No, not actually. When I left Elf, I just needed to get away from the music business altogether. I remember I was driving an old truck. I even took the battery out, or the radio out of it, and
Really?
didn't even listen to music at all. No, I just needed to get away. We lived out in the boonies, you know, and I just fished and hunted and cut firewood and, you know, enjoyed the wilderness for a few years, you know.
Built a cabin.
Built a log cabin,
Really?
lived out in the woods, lived basically off the grid, which I should still be doing right now. But, you know, we heated with wood and, you know, didn't have electricity and
Had goats.
the whole
They
deal.
were a riot.
No, so yeah, but I was living that lifestyle when I met Carl, when I formed, because after a while I realized, after a few years, you know, I was still pretty young, and I'm thinking like, what am I going to do the rest of my life? You know, I mean, I learned a lot. I worked with a mason for a little while just to learn it. I worked with a carpenter for a while to learn it. I worked for the, you know, Department of Environmental Conservation because I love the outdoors, a couple summers. But it got to a point where, well, I really don't want to be a mason or a carpenter, or, you know, and I couldn't work for the DEC anymore because I didn't have a college degree, you know, and everybody I was working with, you know, were going to college for that, and I only got the job because I knew somebody. So I figured, I got to make some money. Well, I think I'll start a band, play some bars, you know, I'll make $50 a night or whatever. And that's when I started looking around for people, and that's when I met Carl. And from that point on, you know, we started the Rods, you know, and the rest, the Rods history started right there, you know, but I was still living off the grid during that time.
We would take them home from gigs back to the cabin.
Yeah, after a job, we would drive up into the boonies and drop me off at the cabin in the pitch dark, you know, so.
I have to tell you, too, that when we first started, our hair was really long, his hair was really long, and we go to a diner locally. You know, nobody had any money to go to a real restaurant. We go to a diner, and these old guys would come in, and they'd sit down. They'd go, David, and they'd sit down. and they would ask him tips about fishing or trapping. These old guys asking this long-haired freak about fishing and trapping and hunting. It was just a riot. This first time I saw it, I was cracking up. I'm like, this grizzled old guy who looks like he's probably been doing it his whole life, and he's asking David about that.
That's great. And now, when you guys, like, how exactly did you guys hook up? Did you just kind of, were you out at a club and saw Carl play?
I went down, there's a fellow that we both knew at the time, Dennis Dragone, and Denny had known that I was looking to put something together. He goes, "Oh, I don't know, he's a great drummer, Carl Canedy." And I never knew of Carl or the band that he played in or whatever. And he goes, "You gotta go see him play." And they happened to be playing real nearby. Carl's band at the time, playing nearby. So we went down there to hear him play, and that's how Carl met and I met, and we made plans from there. And then we went. Obviously, we had to get a bass player, so we went through 2 other bass players before Gary joined the band. And when Gary joined the band, he was the right match for the 3 of us. So that was it.
Now, when you guys started meeting and talking about getting a band together, who was it? A kind of a group decision of the direction you guys were going to go in, of like the harder rock kind of stuff? Because
I think
when your guys' first album came out, it was way harder than a lot of stuff that was out there.
I can tell you, both of us wrote, but David wrote a song called "Getting Higher," and when he wrote "Getting Higher," that clicked with me. I'm like, that's the template for the band. Like, I'm going to start trying to also write in that direction. But it was really like we started within a few months of doing covers of writing material. When he did that was the sound. If you listen to that song, you listen to us now, you see the big connection.
Yeah, I mean, originally, in my mind, and I think Carl's too, the band was originally put together to go out and play bars and make a few dollars. It wasn't put together to make records, to tour, to be, superstars or whatever. It was only put together to go play some clubs and make some money. That was my thought. But the thing is, once you start going, because of our personalities, the way, Carl writes music and I write music. So once we start playing, we want to write. So we started writing. We just started writing songs. Okay, when you write a song, you want to hear what it sounds like to be recorded. So then we started to record them, and that's how the whole thing started. It wasn't something that was planned. And as far as like my style of writing, and when Carl said he heard the song Getting Higher, I'm basically a one-dimensional guitarist. I have one style. I mean, no matter what song I play, it sounds like like me, and that I play it that way. And so when I started to write, it was different for me because we didn't have a singer, like say Ronnie. I was used to being in a band with Ronnie, a singer that could sing anything. So for me to write a song, it was like an open book for me. I could write anything because I knew Ronnie could sing it, And but now it was a different thing because we had to write songs that we could perform the vocals on, because back then Carl did singing too, He sang lead on some stuff, and we all did like 3-part harmonies on choruses, and we didn't have a lead singer that could really, we could really broaden the scope of our writing. So we became like, a version of what Motorhead is, like they had to stay within their realm of what Lemmy and what they wanted to do. So in some respects it was good because it established us a style, It established us a style. That's what we are. We are what we are. It's not like, there's no singer like Ronnie, but there's an identity there, And when the three of us play, aside from the vocal part, the drumming and the guitar playing and Gary on bass, there's an identity to that sound and that style of playing that really meshed, really clicked. So, the vocal is basically and always been secondary. It's not like a great band with a great vocalist. It's a great band that's all together. The vocal fits and works, but it is what it is. So we had to stay within that realm. And we talked about keyboards before. With the intro, there's been through the years, times when I've always wanted to put keyboards in, and I could always hear in my mind in a song where keyboards would work really well, but I knew being a trio, we could never really go out and perform those songs, to match the sound of the record without having a keyboard player, and we had already really established ourselves as a trio, even though, Sabbath and Dio and Heaven and Hell, they always had a keyboard player behind the stage,
Yep.
Even though out
back
front they
then
were a
it was-
trio, back then they kept the keyboard player behind the curtain.
3 guys with that majestic keyboard
So,
sound coming out.
Right. Where's that coming from?
But anyways, the new album, this last album, I just like, we got to have keyboards, just to embellish. And, it's worked for us because the response has been really great and all positive. The fact that the keyboards are there. And probably, nothing's happened yet, but more than likely, if we go out and play again, we probably will have a keyboard player with us. So that we can, capture the same type of sound, because there's a lot of great songs on this new album that would be great to play live. But I really think that even some of the older songs,
Benefit from keys.
I was just thinking
it
that.
would be great
Yeah.
to have the keyboard player. So, we just got to wait and see what happens. Right now, we don't have anything, in the future as far as jobs or anything like that booked, but, we'll see what happens.
I was going to say about songwriting, when we first started writing songs, we tried to go play them, like you said, you want to play them. So we would play them, and then it was the evolution of that, like how everything would evolve is you would play a song and you would say, well, that was a little more ambitious, but the crowd didn't really react to that song. But this song, the crowd really reacted to. So you kind of start to tailor what works for you live, and then you take that back to your songwriting for the next songs, and that's kind of how it evolved. And Dave's a stylized singer. I mean, he's got a great identity to his voice, and he's not Ronnie, of course, but who is. But he's got a style, so it worked for us.
Yeah, definitely. And for those of you guys out there that have never seen the Rods live, they have an amazing, dynamic live show. Gary and David are just totally in sync on stage, doing the back and forth, and then Gary gets down on his knees.
But we're getting older now.
Okay. little takes a little longer getting back up, but
might not be as chaotic as it has been in the past.
So, speaking of playing live, how did that come about? Was it just like a natural, like it just happened, or?
Well, from the beginning, you mean?
Yeah, when you guys started forming your live show.
When you form a band, the whole object is to play live,
right.
Because that's the rush, that's the thing of playing. And I'm not sure, we started to play these clubs, and then this fellow from Rochester came that had a management company and a booking agency, and he saw us play and approached us and wanted to be our manager, and we ended up signing a deal with him. He was our manager. He ended up getting us the audition to get the first record deal that we had for the Rods. So that's how the whole thing kind of started. And but playing jobs, and at that point, that stage of the game, we had a booking agency, we had a manager, we had people working for us to get us out there playing, as opposed to nowadays where we pretty much do everything ourselves. We don't have a manager, we don't have an agency, but we do have a record company now. So getting jobs, and it's a whole different world now than it was then. You could go play a job. Now the cost of everything is so great, to travel, it's lots of money. And so we have to get jobs that can actually, be affordable to the promoter as well as, we've gone on a lot of jobs. Most of our jobs are out of the country, and we've gone on a lot of those jobs as a break-even situation, because by the time the promoter pays for the travel expense, the hotel, the food, the whole deal, it costs a lot of money.
Yeah, it's thousands.
And there has been times when we've gotten a performance fee and gotten paid, but most of the time it's for promotion. It's a break even. We go play, we have a good time, and we come back, and it's promotion for the band.
Right. I was going to mention you guys have played a lot of festivals in the last few years in Europe, and just how's the vibe for these shows? It seems like if you watch a video of like any given band these days, like you watch these like Sweden Rocks and Vakken and all those, like the fans are just like crazy, and then you see a video like of like a show in the States, and it's like so much less enthusiasm, it seems.
I think.
Do you guys find that that's the case?
Yeah, for the most part. But the fans here who come to see us are real fans, so we get a great response. But in Europe, the fans find music that they really love and believe in. In America, you grow up and you listen. Most of the time, like especially my generation, you grow up, you listen to the radio. So now you're listening to the radio. You're going to. That's what you listen to. So that changes all the time. So you're basically spoon-fed what to like. You don't find it on your own, whereas Europeans do. That's why if you look at blues and jazz artists, have been going to America or to Europe from the 60s and being very successful there, because they love the music and they recognize the music. Whereas here, we've kind of looked at jazz and blues. It's kind of like, whatever. Not a huge genre, it exists now more so than ever, but in those early days it was lean for those people, but people in Europe recognize the talent, and that's why. So the fans have always been not spoon-fed anything. They find it on their own, and when they find it, they're like country fans in America. They love an artist and a country artist. They're with that country artist for their career. They love that artist. They support that artist. Not the way it is here. We're the flavor of the month in America, and that's why I think you see that at concerts sometimes. Oh, this isn't the hottest band. Oh, it's no longer Anthrax, it's Gojira. Okay, fine. So I'll see Anthrax, but I really want to see Gojira because they're the best band in the world today. So it's a little bit different. You don't see, to me, I don't see that same kind of music, passion for music. Like you guys have a passion for music, but not all metal fans are quite like that. Brian's that way. Brian's like an encyclopedia.
Yeah, he's crazy.
He's, but he's like so knowledgeable about music. I mean, it's more than just skin deep. I mean, he really goes stuff I've never even heard of or thought about asking. So anyway, I do see a big difference with European audiences in that way. Very respectful as well.
You hit it right on the head. Like, America is flash in the pan, I think. And there is people like us that love the music and stay with it no matter what. And you don't have that in the United States. You said the concerts overseas, huge crowds, they're totally into it.
But the other thing in Europe, you have to remember, in America, we have pockets of people such as yourselves who really are knowledgeable hardcore fans. But America is huge. Now, if you condensed America into Europe, where now you're looking at maybe the area of 5 states, 6 states, right? Now suddenly going to festivals is a lot easier. And so there's a little bit of that involved as well, that it's easier to go from one country to the next. I mean, you know, Germany's huge, but just saying, in the States, you've got some hardcore pockets, but it's so spread out that you don't get that synergy, that whole dynamic of a lot of people coming together.
Back in the day, touring when you guys first started out, I know you guys, Metallica has opened up for you guys, bands like that. How was it touring back then? That just had to be amazing. And I kind of said before that when you guys came out, you guys were like the American wave of heavy metal, pretty much. Because when you, like I said before, when you guys came out, you guys were a lot heavier than a lot of the stuff that was out now.
Yeah, the Rods Riot. I mean, we were part of the early American,
the new wave of heavy metal,
right?
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to.
I don't think we realized it at the time.
No.
I don't even think anyone even thought of anything like that.
We were just doing what we were doing,
Right.
but we didn't realize it until after the fact that was the new wave that was coming through. But
And I wanted to say about the show, when we first started playing, Steve Starmer was our bass player, and we played a lot of shows, a lot. And we played everywhere they would have us, and you know, we cleared out a lot of shows in there, a lot of clubs in the early days. We played, people hated it, and they would leave, you know, because they weren't used to metal. There was no real metal scene per se. And I'm like, what is this noise? Oh my God. But we played a lot of shows, and we lived on $5 a day, and Steve Starmer smoked.
at the
So
time,
on his $5 a day, he had to buy cigarettes as well. So, you know, but we played a lot. We played everywhere they would have us. But I think the show evolved because when you're a 3-piece band on stage, you can't just stand there after a while. And so these guys, then once Gary got in the band, and these guys started really, you know, we're doing a bigger show now. We're opening for whatever act. Well, we can't just stand there and play. So that's how the whole thing evolved. It was just a period of time and doing shows, and eventually they were so great together that it was just, you know, as my daughter said when she was young, watching a video, what did she say? It was, because their hair was so long, she said it was 2 mops and a gorilla.
I had to take a breath after that one.
I couldn't argue with it. I didn't know what to say, honey, that's not that respectful. I was like, well, you're dead on. There's just 2 mops waving around and some gorilla back there playing drums. It was Animal back there.
And with some kick-ass music behind it, absolutely.
Got a line on you, baby. It's not a burning disease. So give
when you guys started to record, did you produced it right off the bat?
We did.
You were
We had no
self-produced.
producer. We didn't even know it was producing. It didn't, it was like, well, there's no one here. Okay, what do you want to do now? I've got a
Nobody else
song.
there.
I've got a song.
That's and even listening back to those albums, the production is really good. There's a lot of albums that came out back then that are crap. I mean, the songs are good, but they're tough. They're a tough listen because of the production on them.
Well, David had a lot of experience. I had experience, and but Chris Bubach, who engineered the first Metallica and managed Spyro Gyra Studio and has recorded Spyro Gyra on a lot of gold and platinum acts. Phenomenal engineer. In fact, Chris has a new business which is Swiss and something else, but they do super high-end studio monitors, and that's their new business, which is very, very high-end and very cool stuff. But Chris engineered, and he was at Fredonia, and that's how we started recording. He was my best friend's brother, and they were family friend, and he would get studio time.
Yeah, Chris was going to school in Fredonia to become an engineer. He was going to engineering school. So, because of his association knowing Carl, we got to go in there and record like on weekends and when the school was shut down. And at the time, we were playing jobs. We were playing 4 or 5 nights a week, and then on those off nights, the rest of the days we would go to the Fredonia, and sometimes we'd work all night long. We'd be up all night because that's when the studio was free. And our album became Chris's project for school.
Class project.
That was his class project.
And we paid for it by buying them
in
an
return,
Eventide harmonizer or something.
And in return,
donated to the school.
In return, we had to buy the school a piece of equipment for the studio. So.
But he's right. Overnight, there were times. Remember the time when Chris, he had taken someone's time, or they'd given the time, and the time was up, and they're pounding on the door to get in, and Chris is like, "No, we're going to finish this," and it was crazy.
There's times when we were laying on the floor. Some of us were sleeping on the floor in the studio while the other guy was doing his parts, and it was just a lot. I mean, plus we're playing jobs, going to motel, and the 2-inch tapes back then. We were recording 2-inch tapes, so we had boxes of 2-inch tapes that we carried with us all the time. We couldn't leave them at the school. We brought them into the motel, back into the car, and we had to carry these tapes like all around with us.
Keep them away from magnets.
So.
Do they still exist?
They
those
do.
tapes?
Well, most of them do. Some have been lost. The ones we did in Europe for the Wild Dogs album, I don't know who has those. I tried to contact the engineer unsuccessfully, and I have the tapes. I transferred them digitally. We did this a while ago. So the first album is transferred digitally, so it could be remixed. Although I don't know if it should ever be remixed, but we could remix it. And I'm trying to think what others we have. So and I know Chris has in the raw, so they're around.
Okay,
Some of it.
Very cool. And David, you just recently played with the Dio Disciples, a couple shows, correct? Give us the scoop on that. That's cool. I know a lot of people are back and forth on the whole concept. But I was against it in the beginning, but I watched some videos of it, and I think it's done really tastefully.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
It was awesome. I mean, I've been all along from the beginning pro, for it, because I think it's just a good thing. I think Ronnie would have liked it. There's a lot of different, like Zappa. They're doing Zappa. They're doing a lot of famous, like. Kiss is doing. They're doing it now while they're still alive, so that when they're gone, they're gonna, But to go down, and I knew that when it was done, and it took them, like after it was completed, then they took another year or more to perfect it and get things right. And because when they first got it done, they went to England and they did like 10 shows, and I don't think it went over too well because they hadn't perfected the show part of it, and there were things to do with the hologram that needed to be perfected. So they took the time after that. So when they went out in the U.S., just in June was it, or whenever, May or whatever?
Yeah, they were on the spring.
The show was really perfected, And now I looked at the list of dates, and I saw that they were playing in Long Island and in New Jersey, and I thought, I'd like to see the show, but driving to Long Island and driving to New Jersey can be such a pain, And I was kind of on the fence about going. and I got a call or a text or whatever from Wendy, and she said, they're going to be where the tour's going to be in, your neck of the woods, Are you going to, I'm coming down to New York. I'm going to be at those 2 shows, Are you coming down, because if you come down, the band would like to have you sit in, play a song. Well, when I heard that, we're going,
That's the deal.
So, and I really didn't know what to expect. I knew what song I was playing. I knew I was playing the encore song, the end nights. I didn't know, because I knew that there was talk about the band all wearing in-ear, because they have to play along with the audio track from, whatever live show that audio track was taken from. They have to play along with that track. So the drummer, or they all have to wear in-ears. So I didn't know if I was going to have to wear in-ears. I didn't know, if my amp was going to be 20 feet away, if I needed wireless, a cable, whatever. But I went prepared. And it was a really great experience, I got to watch most of the show from out front, because I didn't play till the encore. We had a little rehearsal at sound check, But the show was great, and playing the song at the encore was really great, And everybody that was, I was only at those 2 shows, and everybody that was there loved it. The New Jersey show was the first show. It was probably 3/4 full. And the Long Island show was, pretty full. And they were playing theaters, like the Palace Theater type things. It was just a great experience. All the guys in the band are great guys, They're just great people. They're good guys, and of course they're all old school. Nobody wanted to wear in-ear monitors, like Craig Gould was not wearing in-ear monitors, and none of them did. So Simon, the drummer, was the only one with headphones on that kept the beat of the song, that started the song and everything for those guys, and they followed it through listening to regular floor monitors. But it was a great experience. I loved it, and I don't know
how. A great video too, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know how the whole tour went.
Right.
From beginning to end. I don't know if it was, most of it was a success. I don't know any of that, but I know that the people that were there really loved it, and it is a great show. So, some people are against it, and that's fine. Everybody has their own opinion. Let the dead be dead. Don't, that whole thing. One guy mentioned something that really, hit home with me is that he said, well, and he was a guy that, like you, that has a show or does something, and I heard his talk. I don't know if I read it or heard him say it. But he said, I was on the fence with it. He said, but I was visiting my sister or somebody, and they were going to be in that town, so I thought I'd go, And he said, I didn't really think much about seeing the hologram, and he said it was a great show. He said, but the thing that really got him was he got to hear Ronnie's voice, through the big setting. PA again, and those were every hologram. There was a live vocal performance that they took from live shows. So he got to hear Ronnie's voice coming through a big PA again, which that's what sold him on the whole thing. It wasn't so much seeing the hologram, but it was being able to hear Ronnie's voice again.
The thing I love about it is it keeps the catalog. It's one of the best catalogs in metal of music, and it keeps the music alive. It keeps it out there.
Yeah, those albums are amazing. Like you can just throw those on anytime and just no skippers. Just those first, especially the first 3 albums are just like.
And the band is fantastic.
Excellent.
They're great guys. But the band is spot on every night.
Yeah, he's always been surrounded by talent.
Yeah.
From day one. Yeah. Including yourself.
Yeah.
And it's and he has an amazing legacy, and it's great and I'm on board with it now, and it's great that like someone younger like my son that produces our show, he's never got to see Dio live. And this would be an opportunity to at least get a feel,
an idea what it was, plus an idea what it was.
Right.
And this is the embryonic stage of this, So who knows how much better this will get? It will improve, and So.
Right, because we've seen the Disciple. I've not seen the hologram show, but we've seen the Dio's Disciples before, and I'll tell you, it's just great to see that music performed live again by the guys that did it. And we've seen Last in Line, the original Dio band with Andrew Freeman singing, and it's just great to see those songs performed again live.
I mean, we did 30 dates in Europe with Dio disciples, and they were spot on every night. That was a great.
Yeah,
Ronnie
great.
had a great band.
Yeah, they were just absolutely
I
amazing.
think, and we're not talking about it, but I think the Rod's hologram show is going to be fantastic.
All right.
Yeah. They'll have to find 2 mops and a gorilla to do
That's right.
Which
to
would
do
be
the
pretty
filming.
easy.
to do the filming.
Now, let's talk about Brotherhood of Metal.
We stand as one, our heads held high, a legion strong as steel, truth without a lie. All countries, no boundaries, we march hand in hand, with the sound of thunder and power as we stand. No one can break us, many have tried. We rise like the phoenix, metal gods at our side. Loud and proud, we stand uncurled. One nation, all for one, united around the world.
guys, your album before that was Vengeance, and that was 2013?
Like 6 years, 7 years ago. Quite a while ago.
2011, actually.
2011.
Yeah, 2011. So
my math is really bad.
yeah, mine is too. That's why I had to look. I did have it written down there.
Time flies.
What brought about, again, like let's do an album? Like,
A record company.
oh, you guys were approached.
There was really somebody interested.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
Yeah.
Ali Hahn, who's our rep at SBV, had wanted to work with us several times, including the Vengeance album, and it just never came to fruition. So this time we were able to work with him. So, but he's been a fan for a long time. He was the one who had the concept for rejuvenating and bringing forward the Wild Dogs album cover to present day, to modernize it. He's just been has been a good A&R guy, and he just said, make a great Rods album, and then he left us alone. And as time passed, he never said a word. Hey, what's going on, guys? Where are we with this album? He just said that was the directive: make a great Rods album. When it's done, it's done. But that was it. Nobody came to us and said, "Why don't you guys make an album?" Like, okay, would have been happy to.
So how did you get that ball rolling once he put the ball in your court?
David wrote a shitload of songs.
Carl called and said, told me about SPV, and said, we need songs,
And
we need 10 songs.
Every day he would
thinking,
call up, I
holy
got a
shit.
new one.
It's like, okay, I got to write like a bunch of songs. But I knew Carl was working on stuff too, but Carl's got other projects going on too that he's working on. So he couldn't devote, I had things going on, but I could devote more time. And I really worked hard to put together, because I knew as it took us a year or more to get the album done. But still, we had to come up with the songs, and we weren't in a situation like we were in the past where we could get together and rehearse them and learn them, and go into the studio and record them. It was basically like, I got a song now done, just like today when I showed Carl a new song. It's basically, I would do the song on a scratch. These guys didn't even know the song. They didn't even know the melodies or what, or where the verse was, and it's like, okay, do the drum track. And it's like, and Carl would send, that's good, that sounds good, and so it was like, it had to be done that way, because we just weren't, our lives weren't in the way they were like years ago, where we could get together and rehearse every day and learn the songs. But we did it as quickly as we could and the best way we could, and there's always,
the result is great.
There's always bumps along the road, along the way, whatever it is, and the end result turned out to be good. And the artwork was done by a very good friend of ours who did work for us before, Eric Philippe in Belgium, and he captured exactly what we wanted him to in the cover, because he'd send us ideas. We told him our ideas, and he'd send us drawings, and then finally it was the one. And he did an amazing job, and the record company did an incredible job in packaging the thing. I mean, it looks like $1 million. I mean, it really does.
Yeah, it's a great package.
The packaging of the vinyl, with the colored vinyl and all the pictures and the CD, everything is like top notch on that.
And then you guys did a great job sequencing it.
That's right. You did. You were right too.
It's interesting because
right.
David and I tried, and then I asked you, and I sent it to David, and David called me and he goes, I can't. I think this is the right sequence order. Can't do anything better. Neither could I.
Yeah, I just want to say it's a massive privilege to be asked to even.
We should have put your names on there, sequenced by.
There you go. It's because I remember the day that Carl called me. He's like, can you do us a favor? And I'm thinking, who's us? Number one, because if it was he would have said me. And I'm like, sure, what do you need? He says, we're having a back and forth about sequencing the album, and, would you guys at the podcast like to listen to it and help us out with it? And I'm like, fuck, yeah, yeah. So I text these guys, I'm like, you're not going to believe what just happened here. And I remember Carl had played the song Brotherhood of Metal for us probably about a month or two before when he recorded an episode with us. and we only listened to it on my little speaker that I have at the firehouse on Bluetooth, and we were like, holy shit, like this is fantastic. And then when he called me up about the album, and I'm like, yeah, name when you want to do it, and we did, and like we listened to it, and like he shuffled the order, and then we listened to it again, and we kicked it back and forth, and then so Carl's like, okay, cool, we ordered pizza and everything.
I used to never understand why you didn't put Party All Night first.
I don't know.
I like what they said.
That
He
song
goes, party all night. It's like that little cracker you take to cleanse your palate before you go on to the next course.
that song is such an oddball song. And that song I had written a long time ago. And basically, I thought that song would be great played in a strip club for strippers to dance to. And that's basically what that song was written for, because, it's a perfect song for that.
It is.
For the Rods album, we've been criticized on that song, but you know what? Who cares?
It's a fun song. It
Yeah,
is.
it's a fun song.
And we
You
were
get criticized on something anyway.
That night,
If that's
But
the
it
only
is a fun
criticism,
song.
then you're way ahead of the game.
I always tell everybody, ask me all the time, David, that every beat in that song was David's. Like, he told me, play it, sang it, told me what to play, everything, every beat, everything was his idea. But, and it worked out great, I thought.
I think it's a fun song. It's it's like balls to the wall
It is a
metal.
fun
Then you
song.
got a really fun song, and then you're right back into it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great.
Yeah, like that night playing the songs, like yes.
It's like a
And
combination.
that one came on, and we're like,
It's like
we looked at you, we were like, wow.
It's a combination between the Beastie Boys and the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
There was earlier we were talking, David saying, he started as a drummer, but Gary started as a drummer. So, and there was a time when we had 3 in our road crew. Now, Dennis Dragone, we mentioned, Denny did lights for
He was
David.
a light man.
Denny did lights for Colakis, band I still record with, and he was on the. Denny and I would room together on the road. Denny was a drummer, and then we had 2 other guys in our crew. They were drummers. It was a very nervous time for me to not get sick or break a bone. Like, everybody's a drummer here. But it's been helpful because David, when he writes, because starting as a drummer, if you notice in the rods, I don't ask for all the drum breaks. I never ask for any of those. He creates those spots, in the songs.
I always keep the drums in mind, only because that's what I hear, and I know Carl's playing like a book, so I kind of know what'll work in different spots.
You're kind
and
of like
and with a 3-piece band, you need to have a little bit of freedom to express each person. It's like I'm not a great, virtuoso lead guitar player, which nobody really wants to hear that now, anyways. And Gary's always been a basic. He doesn't care about playing a bass solo or anything, but you still need to have the identity of the band. Comes down to the 3 of us, the way we play, the sound that we have.
The individuals together.
And, the individuals, like when you hear Carl play, you know it's him. When you hear me play, you know it's me, my sound. And Gary, too. Mm-hmm. So.
It's like you're an old married couple.
An old married couple.
Yeah, and I think it's just the songs itself. BC and I were listening to it on the way up today, and the production is spot on. Everything is so crisp and clear. You could hear all the instruments, and David, you talked about the keyboards before, and it's a perfect accent for it. Nothing's over the top, shredding wise or drum fill wise. There's some amazing lead playing, and actually everything is amazing on there, but there's nothing that's like you hear it and you're like, that's too much of that. And a lot of times you'll get that. You can pick apart different things, and it's like, but like it's a great package.
Like especially the double bass drumming. Like a lot of albums, it's either and you don't. It's too low, nice and perfectly crisp.
Chris Collier mixed the album, and who mixed Last in Line, and he's been doing all the remixes for Whitesnake. He's been doing almost their whole catalog, remixing it. Excuse me, and. Tool, and he's just worked with so many artists. But when I heard Last in Line, I was playing it on my phone. I went, holy shit. It just jumped out. All the instruments sounded big, and they were all like who did this album? As it turns out, it was he sings with
Tim Ripper Owens.
Lynch Mob.
George
Lynch Mob.
Lynch Mob.
Right.
I thought you meant with the Disciples.
Chris had mixed Lynch Mob as well, and so it was really, for me, once I heard the stuff, I was like, this guy is fantastic, and I'm really glad we went with him.
Yeah.
It was a big hit on the budget, but it was worth it.
It came together great, and we talked about the package of the album also on the way up today. It's like I don't know, have no idea what the cost of any of that is, or the record company picks that up, but it's great. It's very well done. The vinyl is fantastic. Mm-hmm. It's not just a run of the mill kind of throw it out there kind of thing. You have the inserts in it, and the CD comes in the album itself, and it's
like
nice,
Dave said,
glossy.
he's Eric Philippe, and Dave's worked with Eric Philippe longer than I have, but he's become a good friend to all of us, and Eric Philippe is the one who is so meticulous, and he's the reason that packaging is what it is, because he wouldn't let SPV or any label get away with anything. Like, this is it. He lays it out, and he expects the colors to match. Now, my drumsticks, my signature drumsticks, there's the Rods logo, and then my name, my signature. And I looked at it, and I was like, I wonder if that should be. And he sends an email back. It is as it should be. It has been measured. Like, what do you say on
That's
that?
how it's
You're
staying.
Like, that's it, pal. You've got nothing more to say. But that's how he's dead on. So I think Eric really gets a lot of credit for that. And I think SPV obviously saw that the package that Eric put together was so fantastic. We've got to go with it.
That's fantastic. before we wrap up, we really appreciate you guys spending some time with us here. We don't want to, overload you guys. I know you guys have some stuff to work on. Dylan will kill me if I don't do this because it was his idea of something to do. I'm going to give you all your albums. He wanted to do all the albums, but I'd say pick your top 3 albums and your top tracks from them albums. Do you remember them all, Carl?
I do.
So what are we picking? The top 3 albums?
Pick your best 3 albums and like a couple of your favorite tracks from them.
Okay.
I'll tell you, first is Wild Dogs for me. There's some great tracks there was some really good songwriting on that album. Wild Dogs is one of our more popular songs. If you check YouTube, whatever, it is one of the most popular songs we have. Biggest number of views and so on, and a fan favorite. I never thought that we really did the best version of it we could have because of the guitar sound. Like David's guitar sound is so fat and thick, and we didn't really have it in that song.
But in that album, we had a different producer.
Yeah.
We had somebody else producing it. The record label brought in, so it wasn't our sound.
Okay.
So we had an outside producer to do that, and that's why the sound of that album is different.
For me, that I would say the first album, because that just captured the band. That was a thrill in the sense that once it was finally put together, and we actually heard it as an album. And then when Gary came in and we went in and recorded Ace in the Hole, Nothing Going On in the City, then it was, wow, this is what, when you grow up, you're listening to bands who have identities, and now suddenly we're like, hey, we're in a band that has an identity, which David had been in. I'd been in a band, Colossus, which was a band that was schizophrenic. We did like songs at 7/8 time instrumental, and then we did ballads with acoustic guitar. We were all over the place. So it was my first experience really this is a band with an identity, and that's what I always wanted. In the Raw is the other one for me. I would say Brotherhood would be the one, but I want to say In the Raw, because In the Raw is also one of our most popular albums when it comes to views and so on and comments from the fans. But In the Raw was Chris Bubach again, who did the first album. He had studio time. He was now managing a studio in Rochester, and we went there, and we had a pile of songs. We both had written a lot of songs. We went in there and we recorded every song we had, and we did it live. And then David would do a lead vocal overdub and a guitar solo, but it was very minimal. But the basic tracks were all done live.
We recorded the whole thing in a weekend, I think.
Yeah, two days or something, 48 hours or something. And it was, and then our manager came in and took a picture of us and put it on.
After we hadn't slept for 2 days.
2 days. It was brilliant.
Oh, is that the cover picture?
Genius.
Yeah.
Genius. 48 hours later.
Yeah,
okay,
have to look at that a little
the big
closer
budget
now.
for that cover. Big budget.
But I love the fact that that's probably the most honest representation of the band. No click track.
Yeah.
I assembled 2 different drum kits in the studio. I got every drum I could find in every closet, put it together as best I could. That was a drum kit, and so it's I love it for that, because it is what it is, and it's just us playing those songs live.
So for me, and again, we found through playing live shows that on every album there's someone's favorite song. It doesn't matter what album it is. There's a song that we think should be the last song on the album. It's a filler, and we get to a live show and somebody will come, hey, are you going to play such and such? And we'll look at each other and oh my God, that's his favorite song. But there's people's favorite songs on every one of these albums. For me, the Rock Hard album, which was reissued, through.
Which goes for crazy money for vinyl.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well,
the Rock Hard album. That's because we just printed up copies from ourselves, but then it was put out on Arista. Mm-hmm. But that album, because it was the first, album, songs like "Crank It Up" and "Power Lover," and some of the other songs that are still now today, after all these years, the popular
Right.
some of the popular songs we play live. And there's generations of people. These are generations that have gone by. So there's young people. So that album means a lot only because it's the first, it's like having your first girlfriend,
Right.
kind of thing, your first love. Wild Dogs, even though it's one of the most popular albums, even though the sound on that album is not the Rod sound, We had a different producer. We recorded that album in England. It was kind of weird. It was different, but the song, like Carl said, the Wild Dog, the song is the popular song, and there's other songs on that
There's
album.
so many
that are
songs.
popular.
Too Hot to Stop is such a great
You know,
song.
so
and there's so many great-
that album, because it's popular and has some great songs on it. And the second one, I know what Carl's saying about In the Raw, but I got to say Brotherhood of Metal, because I feel like we've come around and we've matured a little bit, you know, with some of the music on that album. As far as the writing, as far as I'm concerned, in the writing and the fact that we've, you know, introduced the keyboards, we've kind of grown a little bit, you know, with that album, and it's getting, you know, good reaction. So those are the three. But again, you know, I think all the albums have their own little thing about them that are great. You know, that I think all three of us would enjoy talking about, and all have great songs on them that people love. But those are the three that I would say are kind of special for me.
That's awesome. I mean, just such a great catalog, and I want to thank you guys again for spending the you know, here we are on a Sunday afternoon up in New York. BC and I did a little road trip today, did a little vinyl shopping also, and to come up here and just check out, you know, where you guys practice all your music. And you know, this is pretty much like the maternity ward of the Rod's music right here. Mm-hmm. And it's just a privilege, and I once again I feel honored that Carl would even think of us to help you guys sequence the album, and it's just amazing.
Well, it was the obvious choice.
No,
you guys seem
perfect.
so into the music and seem to know it so well. It was like, oh, what do these guys have in mind? Because they've got it dialed in.
I mean, thank you for letting us come up and everything. And I love hearing what we grew up listening to, and like kind of like the behind the scenes of it.
Yeah,
I mean, to me, that never gets boring.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you guys for the support.
No,
anything
we
we
appreciate you guys coming up.
Anything we can do. We've been putting the rods out there since we've been starting the podcast. And I told Carl when we recorded before, I said when I was coming up with the format of the podcast and everything that we were doing, and I actually talked it over with Dylan first, and then I talked with BC, and I'm like, once we get into it a little bit, I said we need to have Carl on. I said we need to do some Rod stuff. I said because no idea what our audience was at the time. We have a great a great group of supporters out there. Last I looked, we have listeners in like 40 some countries. So it's amazing. We have amazing support out there, and it's our pleasure to hopefully we can get you guys out there even more than you guys already are, and it's just it's a privilege to consider you guys friends.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah.
You guys are great and been really supportive. And the one thing is that the label is going into a second printing for CDs for the Rod's album, which
Really?
is amazing, and they'll probably wind up doing the same for albums.
That's great, especially these days.
Especially
We
these
don't know what
days.
the initial printing was. Could have been 100. But
5. it was 5.
Well, there's a couple copies that were
Thanks,
bought
Carl.
just sitting in this room today.
yeah.
Yeah, so once again, thank you, Carl. Thank you, David, for spending some time with us. BC, give your little wrap up here. I'll wrap up, and we'll cut these guys loose.
This has been fun. I mean,
Yeah.
This
great.
is awesome.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
the artwork here and things I never saw before.
Gotta
I'm
have
loving it.
Gotta have some place to put all the junk. You know?
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Thank you out there. Check out the new Rod's album, Brotherhood of Metal. It's absolutely amazing. If you're a vinyl collector, pick it up on vinyl because it is an absolute amazing package. If not CD, fantastic. I have one CD player like in our fan. It's in my wife's car, so that's been like kind of permanently in her player. And but like I have it on my phone. It's on the turntable all the time. It's amazing out there. Thanks everyone out there for listening. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We'll see you next time, and there will be a next time.
We worked hard every day, writing songs and playing them our way. Alright.